You know, time and time again, I see this, and it's kind of gotten to me a bit. I didn't realize what it was until last night at about 3 a.m., where just before I'm going to bed, I'm just kind of laying in bed, trying to end up thinking about a few issues on the agenda, when I'm trying to think, what is my next video going to be? And guess what it is? The number one most common problem I end up seeing with every single character on the board. And I've played in a lot of games, so I'm going to tell you this is a lot more frequent than I care to admit. And here's the funny part. Everyone thinks that they're immune from this, which is weird, because it's kind of one of those proofs in the pudding situations. What is that? There are two types of characters and there's two types of GMs, both of which can be categorized in the exact same way, which is the goal. Okay, now let's take your standard adventuring party. You have the goal of, okay, we're going to go into this dungeon. We're going to kick out the goblins. We're going to take their 35 copper pieces and the rusted short swords that they're carrying, because somehow they got their hands on metal rather than the sharpened sticks that they should be jabbing at you with the eyes. And this kind of happens time and time again, where it's like, okay, you got 35 copper, what are you going to do with it? Well, I'm going to make sure that it goes into me getting better gear. Whatever you can end up picking up for that many copper. Here's what I mean. The first type of character, this is the one I see, is reactive. Always reactive. They don't do anything unless the outside world says, I'm going to put you in an uncomfortable situation, and now you got to move. This is kind of forcing the plot. This ends up going into a lot of railroading, and this is where a lot of railroading games happen. This isn't necessarily a problem if you're doing a railroad game. If you understand that that's what you're in for, you're here to be a part of a story, but you are not inherently the story. Well, then, yeah, you got a reactive character. You got a character who is comfortable in his life, and it's only because of this problem that's coming from outside that ends up saying, okay, now I'm going to react. Now I'm going to end up going into that dungeon. I'm going to show those goblins what for, and then I'm going to end up coming back with a few copper pieces, maybe my intestines perforated, and a whole bunch of other bad shit that's happened to me and a couple of buddies of mine, real close war buddies, as a party should be, not ready to backstab itself every 2 seconds. And then there's the other guy. This is the one you don't react to anything. I'm not saying don't sell, but you're not reacting. You are causing the action. You are willing to accept the consequences of your actions because this sets you closer to your goal, whatever that may be. Simple example. Let's go over to the classics. Conan the Barbarian. All right, what was his goal? Well, first of all, his first thing was vengeance. I am willing to go to any length to end up seeing that the head of the serpent is cleaved off. Revenge is a very good motivator, and it makes us root for that character. It makes us understand that character a little stronger. But a lot of his actions, either because he's in the fighting pits or because he's chosen to learn the gift of language and read, take hold of many women, grab hold of a sword, take his freedom, go off to the road, and as soon as he sees his opportunity, knowing that two serpents facing each other is within his eye, he has found the road to his vengeance. This is a compelling story. A simple but compelling story. This kind of story does not happen to a reactive character. A reactive character doesn't really have anything going for him outside of wanting to maintain the status quo. A railroad situation works very well if you want to maintain the status quo. But It doesn't turn into a personal story. Not unless the GM does a lot of twisting in the backgrounds to make sure that this element's here, this element's here. Oh, well, you know that friend from way back? Well, I'm going to bring that back around, and he happens to be a part of that cult that you happen to go through. And this is one of the things you'll see. I want you to think back to the game that you most recently had and tell me, how many of the other players' goals can you say off the top of your head and have seen them do something with it? Because here's the thing. A lot of players, and I mean a lot of players, end up making goals for their character. This is a short term, this is a long term, and that seems to be about it. And then they don't do anything that gets them anywhere closer. They're kind of waiting for the GM to, come on, give it to me. Show me what I'm capable of, and I will end up making sure that I will play the part. You know, I'll play the part of the tank, the healer, the spellcaster, the rogue, whatever it is that you want your 4-archetype basic build that's been done over and over and over to death to the point where it's making me want to cry. Or do you really think that you've seen these characters with not only ambition, but the will to see it through, and will run through, over, around, under, or any other way possible to get where they want to go? Because it's that struggle that makes for the compelling story. It's the fact that there is an issue that is in your way. That, how do you approach it? How do you get around it? What are the consequences of those actions? How do you deal with that? And around it goes. And this makes for the compelling story. How far do you push till you have set your status quo? And at this point, what does Conan do once he ends up taking the head of the serpent? Does he go off and retire? No, he says, I will create my own kingdom. For what was a slave pushing a wheel had ambition and gall. These are the types of characters that make good stories. But the unfortunate thing is that everybody seems to have it backwards. Tell me which game you've probably been in more, and I'm willing to take bets on this. But if I'm wrong, you gotta hook me up at this point, because I'm gonna say, more often than not, when I end up taking a look at the backroom game that's happening over at my local game store, this is what's happening. Everybody sits around the table. The GM tells them what's the situation, this is how it's going to go down, and then the players maybe say a little bit of dialogue, maybe they even try and immerse themselves just a little bit, but then all of a sudden there's nothing more that they can end up doing outside of waiting for the GM to hand them a plot hook and hand them this and hand them that, because maybe the you want to retire and own an inn. That's a simple thing. You want to get out of this life. Why do you want to get out of this life? Has it ever occurred to you to maybe play an adventurer who the only reason he adventures is to give himself the opportunity to get out of this life, find something better than living on the road, potentially being a murder hobo? However, if it's the players dictating what their character wants, what they're willing to do, what are they looking to do, they might have no idea about your world. They might say, I want to, let's take a look at the idea of that tavern, that trade house, right? Get them started with logistics, small logistics. It don't need to end up, micromanaging the whole thing, but you need to end up getting stepping stones, something that gets you closer to it. Those small increments, those small challenges, something that gets in your way, something that ends up letting you push forward. Make it worth it. So when the character finally gets over, when he finally gets that vengeance, when he finally owns that land, when he is finally found his own little place in the world where he's come to settle down. Let that be his reward. Maybe you can extend the story from that, because once you have your reward, you want to keep it. You want to hang on to it because that is precious. Look at how far you've come trying to retain this gold. Now somebody's trying to take it from you. Oh, there's so much more you can end up doing with the character like that. The players are the proactive ones. It's the storyteller, the GM, the flame tender, the DM, the 101 names for it. The person running the game. Their job is to be the world reacting to you. And the world also has its own objectives. It's going to want to do this, and you're going to want to do this, and eventually it's going to meet the crossroads. Congratulations, there's the problem, the issue that needs to be overcome. That's a part of the character's story. You cannot do this with a character who is sitting there waiting for shit to happen. And that's the sad truth, is that if you do not state in some way or another what your character is about, what his dreams are, what are the goals, and make that very clear, you're going to run into a problem. Oh, you could end up saying, I'm mysterious. My designs are my own. I am here on my own accord, for there is an objective in mind that you'll never know. I am the trickster god. That might work. There's a few of you out there, I'm pretty sure, could pull this off. But how many of you have seen this character before? I'm the stealthy assassin. Oh, yes, I will kill you in your sleep. I am the bringer of death. I walk amongst the night. Yeah, congratulations. What do you want? I guess I want a contract, I want to make some money off these skills. Well, too bad. Guess what? The king has another 30 different assassins that he can end up doing. Some that are far less conspicuous than some guy who ends up dressing in a black hoodie and ends up claiming to be part of the night. You know what? You don't end up in his good graces with a few bits of coin. You know where you end up? The insane asylum, or worse. I want to give you that thought. And I want you to go to your game next session, whatever it is, and consider, what are the goals of the party? Not just the whole party, but individuals. In fact, put the individual's goal against the goal of the party. Sometimes that happens, and give them a chance to explore it. Give them find a way. It doesn't always have to end in bloodshed. It could end in compromise. Maybe it's a case of your character is really wanting this goal, but it would cost too much. It would cost the party. It would cost their friends, family. Maybe it would end up costing the land. It would be too much. Because otherwise, every single party would flip their lid the second that the king ended up saying, as much gold as you can carry for your services. And keep in mind, if he's making that offer, what do you think's going to happen when he ends up offering that to the next person if you decide to screw with them? Is there some people who would like to end up keeping that kind of contract? And if you decide, we're going to end up grabbing his gold and then we're going to betray him anyway, that party doesn't live too long. Unless that's what you're all about. Play that story. Don't be afraid of the consequences that come from pursuing your goal. That is a part of the story. And do not feel like it needs to be a situation where, if we don't get this, then I can't possibly get the goal in mind. Some games will end in failure. And that's okay. Because now it's gone from a tale of victory to a cautionary tale. But take a look at your character. Ask yourself, what are his actual goals, long and short term? And I don't mean just write it down on a sheet of paper. I want you to really obsess on this. How can you do this? And if you don't know, talk to your GM. Have them figure out, okay, well, what would your character know? If this is your character's obsession, it might not be yours, but your character's obsession, your character might know something you out of character don't. I know usually it's the other way around. You know, you have a lot of knowledge that the character doesn't. And you're like, I know that's a beholder, but what the hell would a level 1 fighter know about beholders? Nah, I can't use that. Well, flip the script. Find out, talk, work it out with your GM, but make it a point where the character has that goal, that end game, and make them all about it. Because now all of a sudden you have direction. And because you have direction, you can now dictate terms. And it's not just about that magical item. It's about you achieving the goal. How does this help achieve the goal? Simple example. I'm going to give this last example, and then we're going to cut off. I got some stuff I need to get to. But I want you to consider for 1 second the king ends up saying, I need you to yada, 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 eventually turns it to the stereotypical this hand or this my daughter or what have you has been kidnapped by kobolds down in the mine. If they see an army coming, they will kill her on sight. I need you to get in. Well, we can do that for you, Your Majesty, but of course we're going to end up asking for payment. I should have expected it from mercenaries. How much gold? I don't want gold. I want a piece of farmland just out there, and make up a place. You know, ask your GM, is there a place like this? You know, is a place that my character would know about that most people don't? I want to end up having inn at the crossroads. Everything in that crossroads I want to own. People have to come through my territory. Why? Because I'm going to build an inn there. I'm going to have some farmland there. I'm going to build that up. That's going to be my little chunk of this kingdom I own. I'm going to get a few serfs in there. I'm going to end up getting a few people who are working under me, bring in some gold. The next time that I end up getting a major contract with somebody, I might have them build up this little bit of a community. I keep doing this over and over, and guess what? My character suddenly ends up ending the game, whereas your character may have that +3 longsword. My character has an entire community at their disposal. Now, with that comes taxes and all this, and I suddenly gain favor with the king. Which one of us is actually on top here? You know, if you want to talk power gaming in the truest sense of I am going for power, not numerical advantage, but in the world, in that mind's eye, that's where my power comes from. This can only be achieved when you have a goal in mind. Consider, what is your goal? What will you? How far will you go for it? What needs to get in your way to make you stop? If you end up finding this video helpful at all, feel free to end up pressing the like button. If you enjoy these rants and want to end up hearing more on my channel, feel free to hit subscribe. And if you enjoyed this content, feel that it's helpful to somebody, share it with somebody. You might end up finding that these ideas might be useful to other members of your gaming group. If you have any questions, comments, or a topic that you want me to cover, feel free to end up leaving it down in the comments below. And until next time.